When the HOA said my lakeside cabin violated architectural standards, they taped a demolition notice on my front door with a 72-hour deadline and no hearing. No warning. No appeal. But they didn't realize one thing. I didn't just live by the lake. I own the land their entire office was built on. So instead of tearing down my cabin, I tore down their comfort zone and tripled their rent overnight. They tried to erase my cabin. I rewrote their lease. My grandfather's cabin. My cabin sat nestled against pine trees on the edge of Clearwater Lake. Quiet, breezy, built with hand-cut lumberback in 1964 by my grandfather. IT was off-grid, solar-powered, and 100% legally permitted, or so I thought. When I inherited it, I made a few repairs, updated the windows, rebuilt the deck, and added a stone fire pit. I didn't think much of it until I got a knock on the door from a clipboard-wielding man in khakis. You're in violation of Community Code 13B. Exterior materials and deck extensions must be HOA approved. But I never signed anything. The surprise notice 3 days later, I came back from town and found a fluorescent orange sticker slapped on my door. Unapproved structure, demolition required within 72 hours. Failure to comply may result in legal action and fines up to $12. $500. I was stunned that I didn't even have internet at the cabin. No phone signal. No HOA member had ever introduced themselves. This was my family's retreat, private, peaceful. Mind out, I called the number listed. Karen answered. Of course, it was Karen. You're within the HOA boundaries now, sir. That cabin doesn't meet visual standards. We've made our decision. But they didn't do their homework. Karen assumed I was just some loner with a rusty cabin and no lawyer. But she missed one tiny detail. The HOA only owned the neighborhood lots. The land beneath their own office, pool, and clubhouse, that was commercially zoned and still under lease. Me. You see, my grandfather didn't just build the cabin, he owned over 12 acres around the lake. And when developers came knocking in the 90s, he made a deal. Sell the residential parcels, keep the HOA land under a long-term lease. The contract clause that saved me dug up the original land lease from a locked cabinet in the cabin that IT was. Beautifully detailed. Signed in 1993. Expires in 2043. And one little gem stood out. The lessor reserves the right to review and adjust rental terms every 5 years at market discretion. They've been paying below market rent for over 20 years. I call my lawyer. Can we triple it? He smiled. Absolutely. With 60 days notice. But I wasn't going to wait 60 days to fight back. I was going to deliver the first punch in 72 hours. Same as they gave me. Their 72-hour deadline was a gift while Karen and the board waited for me to tear it all down. I was busy. Filing official rental rate adjustments, notifying the county zoning board that I was being harassed over land outside their jurisdiction, sending certified mail to the HOA's attorney, reminding them of their tenant status. And just to add salt to their self-inflicted wound, I submitted a demolition request for their office shed, not my cabin. Because guess what? That tiny side structure they used for storage, built without permits. The cabin stayed. Their rent tripled overnight. Their deadline hit zero. So did my patience. Exactly 72 hours after the HOA's demolition notice, I returned to my cabin. Not to tear it down, but to post my own notice, right on the HOA clubhouse door. Effective immediately, rent increased to $12,000 per month. 60-day compliance required per lease clause 4C. I also included a copy of the original lease agreement signed in 1993, the adjustment clause they'd never bothered to read, in a bright yellow footer. Non-payment will result in eviction. Karen found it an hour later. I watched her from my porch as she read it. Twice. Then turned pale. HOA emergency meeting equals chaos that night. The HOA called an emergency meeting. How do I know? Because 2 members secretly recorded it and sent it to me. Karen ranted. He can't do this. He's bluffing. That lease is ancient. But the treasurer cut her off. It's real. and we've been underpaying him for 2 decades. If we fight this, we lose the land. One board member asked, "What if we just move the office?" Karen snapped. "Into where?" "A pool house." The room went silent. That's when the vice president calmly said, "Maybe next time, we don't try to demolish a guy's family cabin." I played the next card. Violation report. A week later, I submitted a violation report to the county inspector. Not on my cabin, but on the HOA's own shed, which they'd built without permits that I had. Drone footage, time-stamped photos, witness statements from when construction occurred. Result: $6,200 fine, and an order to remove the structure within 14 days. That I also requested a survey reevaluation, which confirmed that part of their garden fencing extended onto my easement, that I gave them 10 days to remove it, or face trespassing charges. Suddenly, I wasn't the guy with the cabin. I was the landlord with the paperwork. Their public apology and new rent bill, they finally broke. Karen, once the untouchable HOA queen, stood awkwardly at a Saturday community gathering, reading a forced apology. "We acknowledge our error in pressuring Mr. Dalton regarding his family cabin. The structure is lawful, and he is within his rights as the landowner and lessor." I stood beside her, holding the new lease renewal. The terms? Rent, $144,000 annually, triple the old rate. Payable in quarterly checks. No further complaint about my cabin. Karen didn't speak another word after that. Epilogue. The cabin still stands today. My grandfather's cabin still stands. Stronger than ever. The porch now has a plaque. Built 1964. Saved 2025. The HOA is under new leadership with a clause added to their bylaws. No enforcement action may be taken without legal land ownership confirmation. The pool remains, the clubhouse stays open, but every time they write that rent check, they know exactly who's in charge. Not out of revenge, out of respect for legacy. Because if you try to bully someone out of their own history, you better be sure they don't own yours. Final words: it gave me 72 hours to erase my past. I gave them a lifetime lease on their future at triple cost. All it took was patience, paperwork, and pride. Because when you come after a man's home, you'd better read the fine print, or you'll pay for it every single month. Like stories where logic wins over power-hungry HOAs? Hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more ruthless takedowns every single week.